What's up, guys? The stream is live. The show will be live in about 5 minutes, but I just wanted to go ahead and let you guys hear that I'm here. I'll be watching chat if you guys are here and want to say hi or go ahead and talk about the patch at all or ask any questions for later. But just one quick reminder, this is an interactive show, and the more of you who call in, the more entertaining it'll be, hopefully. So if anybody ever wants to call in, once again, as always, please get a hold of me. Uh, Either hail me with an at on Twitter or on Discord, or please just send me a PM anywhere you can get me. The Twitter PMs are really hard to use, or excuse me, Twitch PMs are really hard to use, but feel free to do Twitter, Reddit, or Discord. And if you don't have those, then ask me. But either way, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes, and stay tuned. All right, I'm getting bored sitting here, so I'm gonna start a couple minutes early just for the announcements and stuff. So if you're just looking to get into the patch, go ahead and skip like 2 minutes. But either way, once again, welcome, guys. Just updates about the stream and my life. I'm actually moving somewhere in the next week, so that's gonna be a big time sink. And the other thing I've been trying to prioritize was working on the website, and I just feel like it's gonna be great when I get it done, but it's a lot of work. So casting has been on the back burner, and I do appreciate all of the support. You guys have always been very supportive, but yeah, even with all the games going on, I'm having a hard time finding time to cast. So after I get moved, I'll be settled in by Tuesday, but maybe Monday. So hopefully next Thursday, my streaming is ready to go. That'll give me a few days to get it set up, but there might be internet issues with my new abode. We'll see how it goes, but in the meantime, do remember there's a big tournament this weekend. Epicenter, of course, going to be featuring or the first tournament, of course, to feature this new patch 7.14. I almost put Techie's Minds and like maybe a big trolley Techie's face on the screen, but I decided to keep this a little more serious because I don't want to act like I'm celebrating Techies. People seem to be pretty concerned about it, so I'm just gonna say that in general, obviously this is the start of the show now. In general, Techies is definitely the kind of hero that I'm very pleased to see added to Captain's Mode, but it does I've heard lots of negative feedback already, and I think it's going to be. I think this patch will end up being controversial, regardless of what happens, because of what's happening behind the scenes. We'll have to see what ends up happening, but it seems to me like what's going on is perhaps the 2 week patches are being more communicated ahead of time with some teams than others, and it may not even be intentional, but it seems like this tournament and this patch are going to be the breaking point. So we'll see what happens in the actual pro scene and whether this 2 week patch thing it seems like it's getting negative feedback. I'm not gonna lie. So We will see what happens, but I will say that techies being added to captain's mode is in general a positive thing. It's just a shame that there's controversy surrounding it and that the hero doesn't seem like it's necessarily in a good place. I don't play techies at all. I don't think I have a single game on record, but I know how to play him to the extent that I enjoy watching him, especially. We talked about it a lot in Discord, and I'll wait to keep going about it until later when people get here. But I will say that depending on what happens at this tournament, this could be a mistake. So we'll hear more about this maybe next week, or maybe if you follow my Twitter, I'll tweet about it. Let's keep going. First creep wave no longer draws aggro on the side lanes until they meet the other wave. So this is basically one of these hard-coded exceptions that has to do with creep aggro. I agree with comments I've read on Reddit that suggest that this is not a good precedent to set, but I do think that it might be necessary. It makes sense to me that they're trying to push the laning kind of like... It's going back towards the older style of laning where you think, Darkseer for a long time was like the offlaner because he was one of the only heroes that could farm and not have to put himself in danger. And so we're heading back kind of towards a meta where that's at least something you'll have to consider. I think they're trying to keep all the other offlaners who were kind of PMS or poor man's shield heroes, if you're not sure what I mean. The heroes that use that item that got removed, basically I think those are the kind of heroes they want to keep in the meta, but they're pushing it back towards where it used to be, and I think that's a good choice. It's been said in Discord by others, but I do really feel like this is the first patch in a while that I can definitely tell IceFrog personally did most of these changes. Personally. It's going back to the way things used to be in many ways. So I'll point out those as we go along. It's really cool, though. I'm very pleased with this patch overall. It's one of my favorites out of the bi-weekly patches. Okay, so into the item changes we go. Skull Basher now uses a Mithril Hammer instead of Javelin. It now has 25 damage and still has the 10 strength. Bash no longer pierces evasion because of losing the Javelin component. In return, Abyssal Blade now has some damage back, not as much as before, and of course the Bash change also translates to Abyssal Blade. Monkey King Bar now goes to a recipe that contains a quarterstaff and 1 javelin instead of 2 javelins. So that means, if I'm not mistaken, an overall cost decrease of 225, but it ends up giving it back the 10 attack speed, which is something that I found unique about the item, and I always, it may not make a lot of sense, but it is unique, and I like that it's back. They also ended up changing the MKB damage proc type from pure to magical. So what I would presume is that it still pierces immunity, but that it's not, it's still reduced by, in fact, before, you know what? All right, I wasn't going to, hold on. I wasn't going to do this now, but I think I should go look. Does MKB still pierce immunity? I should look. Unless I'm missing it, yeah, I don't think it pierces immunity anymore. So that would mean it is both reduced by and does not pierce immunity. So that's what I think. If somebody knows that I'm wrong, please correct me. Thank you. Oh, hey, Shared Scuns, I just saw you in chat. What's up? You're the first one. If you have anything you want to comment on, I'll get back to it later. But if you say it now, I'll try to remember and swing back to it. We're going to get through all of the changes first, and then we'll open up the floor. So I'm going to try to go a little faster, though, because I always take too long for this part. Maelstrom, which is, in fact, my favorite item, for the record. I'm really happy about this change. It now takes a javelin instead of the gloves in the recipe. So I should have checked in-game. I'll go in-game for this one. Hold on. Sorry, you guys can't see it. Maelstrom, I think it's now cheaper, isn't it? Yeah. It's 100 gold cheaper as well. So that's cool. Unless I'm flubbing a basic fact, but cost of items are kind of my thing, so I think I got that one right. We'll check later. So Maelstrom, not only does it now give you the chance to pierce evasion, the chain damage was increased. So I think this is a very nice item, but the main downside is now that it does not provide attack speed. So I am a little disappointed. It makes it a little worse on heroes like Wyvern, who is my very favorite hero to build that item on, just because it's fun with her low attack point. But I guess we'll see how it works, but I think it's going to change which heroes it's viable on. It clearly is directed at certain particular heroes, like Windranger, who we'll get to later, but we'll see what happens as far as the meta goes. I've been watching like the Dota 2 watch tab all afternoon, and there's definitely been an upsurge in Wind Ranger, I can say that much. But it does seem like Maelstrom is a little less viable on certain heroes, so we'll make a full list. Maybe I'll tweet about it. Mjolnir actually does have some increased value now, though. The chain damage increased to match Maelstrom. The procs can no longer be evaded, but evaded, but the attack speed is still there. It's actually just reduced by 5. So this is now how you get the attack speed. It's a much more value item than before, and I'm pretty sure this is going to mean a pretty large upswing in Mjolnir like we had back during like the troll sniper patch. So that'll be fun. Or maybe it was the patch before that. Somebody can tell me in chat if you remember what patch that was, where Mjolnir was like every hero. Battle Fury now has a 300 gold recipe, so that increases the cost, which is good. It does seem like the item had a bit too much power with that new cheap recipe, although I do really wish they would have just done something to the recipe instead of adding, I wish they would have added a component instead of adding a recipe scroll. But, you know, I think IceFrog is trying to avoid the item being too convenient, and a scroll is always a good way to clamp down on that. So that makes perfect sense. This is a huge change that not enough people have talked about. The trend is towards Blink Dagger, and we'll get to it in just a moment, but Force Staff also being nerfed. And what this trend is really about, I saw some people really saying that, oh, you know, my support with my Force Staff nerf is dead. My Initiator with my Blink nerf is going to be weaker. Well, I think it's basically encouraging you to get other items. If you think of Force Staff and Blink as basically giving you time, you know, consider the time it would take you to move the range of a Blink, or the time it would take you to move the range of a Force Staff. That's basically what you're getting when you use the item. So think of the time you can generate by popping a Lotus Orb, or having a Lincoln Sphere, or having a Solar Crest. It's the same concept, really, in Abstract. So in Abstract, it's encouraging you to buy other defensive items. That's how I see it. So it is nice that this item is being de-emphasized, but it seems like this could have been done a long time ago. I think finally, now that there's other choices, it's something that doesn't slow down the pace of the game. It just changes which items are viable. Previously, when there weren't other item choices, it would have slowed down the pace of the game. So I think that's why it took this long. But, you know, hindsight, I think it's something I would have rather seen them do earlier. Let's keep going. Boots of Travel, building prioritization range is not very important, but it just basically complicated concept, but don't worry about it. It's not going to matter unless you're very imprecise with your clicking. Dagon mana cost now scales. Instead of being a static 180, it's now 120 up to 200 at max. So it does have a higher max mana cost. Will be a slight nerf to the mana pool of someone like a Tinker, but that hero can pretty well die. I don't know if he's still pub cancer, but the last time I played Dota, he was pub cancer. Force Staff, of course, I've mentioned it already, but the big change here is really the mana cost. However, there was a recipe change as well, and this is why I had this window up already. I wanted to go over this. Particularly, this is one of those changes that's a throwback. Oh, crap. I was going to do this earlier. My bad, guys. I meant to take this off the screen because the show started. My bad. So the recipe changed. It now uses Ring of Regen instead of the Ring of Health, and the recipe cost was increased. So the total cost is now $22.50. I'd like to point out that the old recipe used to be 1,000. So we're very well back to where we were in 6.76. Just want to point that out. So we've gone full circle. We're now back to where we were. When was this patch? This patch was in 2012. So we've now gone back 6 years on Force Staff. I would just like to point out that that is IceFrog saying, hey, I love you guys for updating my game and stuff, but I think I had it right before. So here we are, full circle, IceFrog holding down on that one. The mana cost increase is different. It used to cost, the same before? Uh-oh, my back's... when did the mana cost change? What was the original mana cost? I think the original mana cost was always 25, right? I know, it was 100 back in 6.63, which was before my time. So, fair enough. It's been a long time since it was this high, and 6.63 was in 2009, so that's not before my time, is it? I can't even remember what year that was. Let's just keep going. So Force Staff, Hurricane Pike also nerfed accordingly. The same mana cost decrease, but does lose most of its health regen as well. So Hurricane Pike a little less value on those Agi cores, perhaps. You have to think a little more before you just rush that item every game, but I do like that. That's exactly the kind of change that I would expect. Helm of the Dominator, slight nerf. The health regen decreased by 1, reduced the amount of passive attack speed granted. It no longer grants any because of the aura providing it now, but this was just a little bonus before. And then the bounty on the creep is increased by 75, so a nice change. Does make that item feel a little more rewarding when you're able to kill that creep, for the enemy that is. Lincoln Sphere stats reduced by 2, just preventing that item from being kind of like a, just a cat. You don't want to just buy a Lincoln's because you're not sure what else to get. If you get it, it's supposed to be for the ability and not just because you want those stats or something like that. So just making it a little less stat efficient while keeping it otherwise the exact same. I don't think there's really any Lincoln's heroes that were out of control necessarily, but maybe Morphling is somebody you could consider as the potential vanguard of that if it were out of control. And he did get buffed, so that could be part of what's going on here. Magic Wand change now. It requires a 150 gold recipe instead of a mango, which I think was a lovely change. I'm glad IceFrog has finally clamped down on this whole Action Slacks mango recipe thing, because I thought it was silly when I read it, and but before the Sol Ring rework, I would have said there will never be a consumable used as a recipe component. So it is a change that makes sense to me. It's back to the way things used to be. So it does now have 3 all stats instead of 2, and it loses the HP regen, which is a pretty big nerf. But to counteract that, it does gain a +3 charges max instead of 17 before. Of course, Magic Wand is just 15. Enchanted Mango, I've seen a lot of people talking about this change like it's negative in some way, but I really can't see how, other than losing the item slot if you do the daily hero bonus. And I can elaborate on this, but I'm going to ask other people about their opinions on it later. So suffice it to say that basically you now get 70% of a mango for 70% of the cost, essentially. It's not actually 70. Yeah, it is 70. Okay. But the consumed mana is not 70. It's slightly reduced. Gosh, what is that? It's I can't do that math in my head right now. We'll do it later. Necronomicon duration increased by 10 seconds. The point that was made in Discord was that certain heroes can now achieve 100% uptime, but that only matters if you're keeping your Necro units alive, which implies you're not doing very much or that the enemy is bad. So I don't know if that's going to matter or not. I doubt it will matter, but what I'd love to see is Necro being viable as a mana regen item on heroes that need mana regen, because there's a lot of those who currently don't really have a lot of choices. And like Queen of Pain is one that comes to mind. She used to be a great Necro carrier, and she's never really gone back to that build. It was I think that's the old, is that the Vigos build from way back when? Or maybe it's the S4 build, I don't remember. S4 is the Assault Cuirass, but somebody invented this build, and it really stands out to me. I don't know why it died, but you'd like to see your Nature's Prophets building it. Heroes like that, even, I think it'd be great on like Underlord if they could somehow convince that hero to buy it, for example. It's just one of those items you want to see used more. Any hero with lockdown it really works well on. Like Bane is another great one. Anyway, Phase Boots received a very nice buff. This is something that's going to... I've already tweeted about this. It really does change a lot. It now gives an improved turn rate during the phase active, and the phase active is now increased by 20%. I'm going to be a super stickler about my relative percents. I was listening to the BTS show earlier. Shout out if you guys hear this, but you guys need to learn your math. It's a 20% increase. It's not a... Anyway, we'll keep going about this topic later. I'll complain about math. So it's a slight reduction in the speed, so you basically travel the same distance, I believe, or slightly less, perhaps. Observer Ward, Bounty, both gold and EXP now scales based on time, which is a great change that just basically everything in the game now scales slightly more than it used to, so the game feels more even throughout the game. Of course, that kind of depends on how the scaling works. You'd have to get out the old graphs and graph it if you want to make sure it's smooth. But anyway, I would really like to see an interactive comparison over the patches of how much gold is available on the map, because I think that's a real indicator of what kind of meta you have, and nobody's really tried to do it from a high level. So if anybody wants to tackle that project with me, feel free to tweet at me. Also, I feel like this is similar to the other item changes. The recipe cost for Sange now increased by 200. Yasha also increased by 200, and I think this is basically setting up for probably what's going to amount to Sange Kai Yasha, or Triumvirate, or whatever you subscribe to. My version is called Sacred Trio, but whatever you think that item is going to be called, I think they're setting up for it here by increasing the item cost, or the cost of these items, so it's a little easier to balance. That's my read. However, it could just be something more simple, like they want to get Sange used as a more casual item, like the way Yasha kind of is. Yasha, of course, does not get a buff, but Mantis Style gets a buff. It gets its recipe cost lowered by 400, so it's a net 200 cheaper than before, which is great for an item that is otherwise very unpopular. I was going to make this point if it didn't get touched. And Sange now grants Greater Maim, so it is sort of a nerf to SNY and Halberd in the sense that they no longer have an advantage over Sange, but nobody's going to care about that. I guarantee you nobody will even make that point besides me, so I think about items a lot, so... Anyway, that's the end of the item changes. We will be going through these hero changes, but I'm just going to check chat and make sure. Cool. Yeah. Nobody else is here yet, I don't think, but when people get here, if you're going to be coming to call in on the show, make sure you get in the True Dota 2 Discord. Make sure to hit me up if you need that link. So, going through the hero changes, we got Alchemist up first, a hero that, if I recall from the list that I saw a few days ago, he was the third or fourth least picked hero of 2018 so far. It's amazing to me how time flies in Dota, but it's amazing that Alchemist has fallen this far, especially to me considering the relative strength of Aghanim Scepter upgrades in this meta. I mean, I just feel like the value of Ags as a slotless buff like he gives with his Ags upgrade, the value just keeps going up every patch because Aghanims not only keep increasing in value, but the amount of farm seems like, you could run a support Alchemist now, you could just run an offlane Alchemist now, you could run your carry in the offlane and run your mid Alchemist as a throwaway lane. I mean, there's so many ways to do this Alchemist. I'm just shocked that it's not a thing. So it's nice that he's getting a buff. That was a lot of ranting about the hero and not talking about the changes, which I try to avoid, so my bad. Chemical Rage health regen increased from 40 up to 56 to 40 up to 70, so it only scales at the higher 2 levels. Bounty Rune bonus gold also increased by 20%, so that is going to be from 2.5 to 3 times bonus. And considering the other changes that were made to Bounty Rune, I think that's a pretty good change, all things, being equal. I think Alchemist will probably struggle to be relevant even with these changes, is my guess. But Ancient Apparition nerfed. I've seen the point made that this doesn't make any sense because that hero is not that popular. But the only team abusing this hero that I can think of right off the top of my head is probably Liquid. I think VP were running it as well, but Heen was playing it for them, and people have said this is a direct Heen nerf, so I don't want to make that as a joke, but I do think it's pretty well. I mean, I can't see why else they would nerf him, so. Chilling Touch piercing spell immunity was a little odd, but I think that's just the cast. It never pierced immunity on the attack, did it? Maybe it did, but I definitely missed that if it did. So either way, Arc Warden, slight buffs. He gets a magnetic field cooldown at now, is static 20 seconds instead of scaling 35 down to 20. So a flat nerf at all, well, for the first 3 levels. And then level 15 talent also buffed in a way. The Flux cast range was kind of weird, to be honest. Specific spell cast ranges only make sense for skill shots like Line Stun, Earth Spike, and for things like Waveform or Time Walk, because they're so granular, you have to know where to click them. It's very important to know what the cast range is. With a spell like Flux, it's a targeted spell. That doesn't even make sense to me, so I'm glad they changed that. Flux duration is basically a max damage increase, so interested to see if Arc Warden will ever be viable, but according to Muddy, I would say no. Axe Battle Hunger mana cost rescaled. It's now, instead of a static 75, 50 up to 80, so it's now higher at level 4, but the spell's getting better slowly over time, so having a scaling mana cost does make sense, and with the level 50 at level 1, it's much more spammable now, so I would expect Axe to be making a comeback in the offlane, even though he's not really that much stronger in a vacuum. It's really the lane changes that are going to be affecting him the most, I would say. Being one of the offlaners best suited to jungling, it does make sense to me, but we'll see if he ever comes back. Excuse me. Because of the blink nerfs, I would worry about Axe as well, and even the Force Staff. These Earthshaker type heroes and Axe and heroes like that want to get a blink and a force definitely got a nerf this patch, especially being strength heroes as well. So we'll see how that ends up working out for them. Batrider base strength increased by 3. This was a little weird. If you were watching the BTS stream earlier, they were confused, but I think it's just because Batrider is a forgotten hero, it seems. which is, I felt weird saying that because you probably remember, if you've been around for long enough, that Batrider was like the omnipresent meta hero. But yeah, he's kind of like Darkseer now. He's pretty weak. And it's funny that they're both countered by Oracle, but that hero definitely isn't terrible right now. I'm not sure if he's good, but anyway, Bloodseeker also getting a minor buff. He is one of the least picked heroes as well of the pro meta this year, and Blood Riot Ground Vision increased simply to match the radius of the spell. Makes perfect sense and was kind of awkward before. Blood Rage cooldown also decreased at at lower levels by 3-2-1, so it now scales 9 down to 6. Brewmaster Primal Split permanent immolation damage increased, so instead of being 15 up to 45, it's now 20 up to 60. So better scaling, but I will point out that later in the patch there is a buff to also Warlock's Golem Immolation, which is slightly better. So basically I think it would be like Golem Immolation is the best, and then Radiance, and then Brewmaster. So, because I think, isn't Radiance is 65 right now, isn't it? It changes so freaking much. How am I ever going to keep it straight? I feel like my old Dota knowledge is hurting me sometimes. It's crazy. Where's the freaking aura? There we go. It's 60. Okay, so it's the same now. It's the same as Brewmaster's. So if Brewmaster has Radiance now, he's doing 120 per second, which is pretty good. Broodmother got a pretty nice rework here. I've seen a lot of people saying that this seems like it's going to make her weaker because she's now countered by more. But I think the playstyle of being able to forget about your spiderlings is just so forgiving and so much easier. And, you know, it does lower the skill cap. The micro required to micro those spiderites may not be worth it anymore because of the reduced bounty. I mean, it's a severely reduced bounty. It's not even remotely close now. It's from 16 to 21 down to 3. So I don't want to do that percent in my head, but what is that, like a 7-fold decrease almost? That's crazy. So that's like what, 15% of the original bounty. And then they don't have any armor anymore, and nothing was done to their magic resistance, which stays the way it was. And if I tell you the way it is, I'll probably get it wrong. So just look it up if you're confused. But suffice it to say that Beastmaster now counters her much harder than before. And we were talking in Discord, but I think maybe like Dazzle, Undying, other heroes with small instances of physical damage would be more viable against her than they used to be. So we will see how that goes. I actually don't know what it's going to do to her meta-wise, because I don't think the amount of gold she fed was really the issue with the hero. It seems to be basically encouraging this pusher nuker playstyle instead of the kind of like physical damage ratting style. Maybe, you know, group up with your team and push would be the optimal strategy here. And we'll keep going. This is taking pretty long, guys, so maybe about 20 more minutes of patch notes, and then we'll be getting started with the interactive portion. Chen, Hand of God Heal improved by 50 at level 3 and 25 at level 2. So small buff to the few remaining Chen players, and everybody else probably doesn't care. I think it's criminal that he was ignored for so long, but he is in a good place. I mean, he's not really that weak right now. He's been nerfed, though. Wasn't there a nerf for him in 7.13 last week, 2 weeks ago? What's up, Crown? I just saw your message. I'm checking chat. Nobody's in Discord yet, so if anybody wants to call in, you can be first in line. Crystal Maiden getting a nice nerf. I posted a funny comic, but literally no damage now, I would say, is probably the opportune way to put it. Also, the freezing field attack speed slow was increased by 100%. It sounds so cool, but yeah, it's just from 30 up to 60 now, so it's going to be noticeable if you're actually using it at a low level, especially to tank up. You know, people won't be able to attack you during it a little bit, but I don't think the hero is going to be salvaged by just this one change. Now, speaking of salvaged, heroes that might be newly viable, I think Darkseer is going to come right out of the trash can, and he's going to be a nasty hero this whole weekend, and probably going to be nerfed in 2 weeks, because people have forgotten how this hero works. I mean, not that they've forgotten how it works, I just think that as much as the meta has evolved, and as simple as this hero can be to play, and as successful as he can be, there's a reason why every TI you always see Darkseer, regardless of how good the hero is. I really think it mostly has to do with just how reliable he is. So this change further improves that. Wall of Replica gets a lot stronger. It's less micro required. The illusions now automatically attack their target instead of just standing there, which was always weird. And I would like to point out, the incoming damage is reduced by 33%. That's 100% in total. Suck it, BTS. All right, anyway, keep going. Dark Willow, Bedlam damage decreased at higher levels, still the same at level 1. I think that's probably the way to go about handling it. Although her other nerfs do seem a little... I think the Curse Crown Vision is fine, and I like the talent change because there's really no point in having a talent like this if it's not worth taking. I mean, it's kind of how I feel about the Wyvern level 25 Curse talent. You might as well make it bigger. But the Bedlam rotation duration does strike me as a pretty big nerf. It does make it harder for her to focus one hero down. That's a 20% decrease to her DPS. I'm having a lot of fun with these percentages. You guys have no idea. All right, Dazzle, fixed poison touch effective area covered, not scaling properly. That was a real doozy of a bug, I guess. Took them a while. But no, that's a quality of life, not going to matter. Death Prophet, base health regen decreased by 25%, now was 2, now down to 1.5. And seems like with as popular as that hero is, and I think she got nerfed slightly 2 weeks ago too, so she should be in a good place now. Probably still first pick worthy if you are the kind of person who wants to Zerg rush down the enemy team, I guess, wants to TI4 Deathball, but that seems like it's only a strategy-based thing. She's no longer the meta must-pick, Like, the fact that she was viable so long in the safe lane role and that nothing happened to her was a clear indication to me that something weird was going on, so... Earthshaker, so anyway, if you guys have thoughts about Death Prophet, we'll circle back to it. But Earthshaker, base damage increased by 3, hoping to give life back to Core Shaker, who has been deader than a doornail. He's been one of the least picked heroes all year. I think he was like fifth least picked. I could find that list and show you guys, but regardless, Core Shaker's been very dead, and Support Shaker only slightly less dead. So I'd love to see the Mid Shaker, the physical damage, maybe even the Aghanims build come to life one day. So for me, I feel like you can't buff him enough because nerfing Support Shaker would be fine. You need to buff Core Shaker. Anyway, Ember Spirit did get a nice buff. I saw Zai playing it a little while ago, and it does seem to me like, among other things, what's going to really help this hero is the Maelstrom change. So keep your eyes out for the magic build to kind of resurge here. Or make a resurgence is what I was searching for. For Ember Spirit, the Flame Guard magical damage absorbed now increased at lower levels by 30, 20, 10, so it's now 80, scaling up to 500 still. Searing Chain's duration now scales normally, which was always weird that it matched it kind of looked like the target scaling and was confusing, so it actually scales like a normal scale now, which is great. Searing Chains now does damage in half-second intervals instead of, I believe... what was it, quarter-second intervals or 1-second intervals before? I'm not sure which one it was. And Searing Chain's total damage rescaled now, only slightly increased at level 1, but it does deal a considerable amount more at level 2. So it's actually more even instead of being plus 40. So it was actually plus 50%, plus 100%, and then plus 25%. Here, it's just going to be a more static, not a nice even percent, but it's more even. So a lot of changes seem to be about making the game more consistent, which I do appreciate. I feel like everybody appreciates it. They just don't have a good way to, it's not one change that matters. It's all of the changes. So Enigma, Malefice stun duration also evened out. It is increased at lower levels, but it also just scales more like a normal stun and has a scaling cooldown more like a normal skill and has a lower mana cost, which is perfect for a spell that's really not very useful early on. So it's more useful at level 1 and has lower mana cost. We'll see if there's actually other changes like this where spells are buffed but their cooldowns are increased at low levels to compensate. There's one with Wraith King later that's the exact same, and that just seems to me like whoever's doing this balancing is learning what makes these skills work at different time periods. So I like to see these changes. I would have to imagine that both Enigma and Wraith King, who I already mentioned, are going to be much more playable now. So look out for that. Small changes making a big difference there. Faceless Void getting a change. Chronosphere cooldown increased only at higher levels. So a 5-second increase for level 2 and 10-second increase for level 3. So it now scales 140 down to 120. And the point that was made earlier on BTS's show was that it makes Aghanims more core, which I agree with. That's about all I have to say. Invoker has his invoke mana cost reduced by 33%. It's a whole lot of percent right there. So should help that hero who really doesn't have any... I mean, he always builds Yules. Or he used to always build Yules, I guess. Wait. There was a time when he always built Yules, but that must have been a while ago. I don't know what he builds for mana regen. That's really what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure where he gets his mana regen these days, so if it's not like, Urn or something like that for Cold Snap, I don't know what you're building, so... This is nice for a hero who definitely has those issues. I will say, though, Refresher buff, I can't wait to see some Refresher Invoker now. That item is so good right now. Anyway, IO getting the most changes of the entire patch. Really happy, actually, about these changes. I've seen a lot of angry IO players, including Crit on Dota, the, of course, well-known player for EG, and a well-known IO spammer. So I do agree that this change reduces the skill cap. We're going to go over them in whatever order I choose, I guess. This first one basically changes. So the slow is no longer on Tether, but it's on the spirits. However, the spirits can't be granularly toggled in and out. They have to be... It's all or nothing. It's either 100 range or 700. So you're sending them... I think there's still a travel time, and that's what this note here in the parentheses is about. 1.5 second cooldown is what I would assume the duration of the move is. So instead of being able to just kind of wiggle your spirits and do all kinds of micro with them, you're essentially now locked into just a fixed out back in. You can't change mid trajectory. So it makes IO easier to play against, but they now slow, which is much stronger. I mean, let's be honest. Having the slow untethered wasn't... Not only was Tether overloaded as an ability, but Spirits was, even though it does a lot of damage, for a long time considered a pretty poor ability. So... I'm happy to see that IO has he's getting much more distinct with all these recent changes. I also think the spirit creep damage being increased is a clear sign that this hero is meant to abuse stacking. So I think you guys should be taking this literally to mean I want you to stack for your carries and then help him clear the camps. So hopefully that's what we see. The other biggest change, of course, the first one, is that Tether can target spell immune allies. As somebody who doesn't play IO but aspires to play IO, I feel like I can finally maybe give it a try because it seems to me like he's just such a good hero and so much easier to play maybe now. Easier from the sense that you don't have to learn weird mechanics. He's just more like other heroes almost. But the boots change, that was like, 2 patches ago. There are things about him that are still unique, and that's what I like. I feel like they've picked what was good about the hero and continued to make him more unique. I also really liked level 25 talent. It was really weird to me that a hero with relocate is his kit. I mean, so is overcharge and so is tether, but it's all one ability if you think about it from a certain perspective. Those 3 spells pretty much all work together, and being able to reduce the cooldown of your relocate is crucial, especially after they basically made tether not have a cooldown. So this is the best thing the hero could get to scale, I think, and the Tether Stun just didn't do anything for him. It seems like nobody was picking it up, or if you made it to late game, I'm sure you considered it, but it wasn't making a difference from what I could see. The 25% EXP also is going to be great for IO players, so I'm actually going to try to learn this hero if I can make myself play some support. Leshrac, moving on, does get one small change, and I already heard that this was I want to make up a word. It's not a word. They reverted a buff, I think, here, but maybe I'm just misunderstanding. I think they increased the mana cost, but it's not the same as it was before. Let's go find out. What is Leshrac's Lightning Storm? Oh, God. Lightning Storm hasn't been updated. I need to go to the change log. Where is Lightning Storm mana cost? Okay, so here's what it used to be. This is what I'm thinking of. So it used to be 90 up to 120, and now it's 80 up to 140. Huh. Pretty weird how these things go in cycles. If I'm being honest. So we'll see if that makes a difference. But he was very popular the last 2 weeks, but I don't think he was. This isn't going to stop him if he's overpowered, but we'll see. It's a very small nerf. Especially because, I would love to see, Kaya on Leshrac. Maybe if it's really an issue, just buy a Kaya. But anyway, Lich getting a very nice buff. I'm pretty excited about this one. I think he's a horrible hero to play against and horrible to watch, but as far as tactically, he's very interesting. And this Lich idea that IceFrog has had for a while, that he can be kind of like a throwaway support that turns into a kind of an average intelligence right clicker. He doesn't have any real steroids besides just like his slow and his talents, but he has GPM and damage, so I mean you can pretty much do whatever you want with this hero. I've seen several posts already suggesting that this is one of the easiest to win MMR with heroes. So I would say if you're looking to grind out a hero, try Lich. He seems like he would be stupidly easy to play right now, and I fully agree with that assessment. Just abuse the new hard off lane, basically. Let's move on. This is taking pretty long. Lycan, the wolves are now much stronger at low levels. The health was increased by 30, 20, and 10 at lower levels, and the damage now scales instead of 17 up to 46. It now scales 26 up to 50, so a pretty nice buff. Lycan definitely fell off hard there after the nerfs. I'm trying to remember which nerf it was that killed him, because he had the the classic Helm of the Dominator build that was really blowing up. But anyway, with the slight buffs to Necro, maybe these changes will be enough to bring him back. I think it should be. He's not a hero that anybody misses, so we'll see how it goes. Mirana getting nice buffs. Leap. Attack speed, buff duration increased by 25%. The attack speed now scales better at lower levels. Instead of 25 up to 100, it's now 40 at level 1 up to 100. And then Moonlight Shadow gives 15% movement speed passively, which is honestly, I feel like the Mirana Octarine Core build with her level 25 talent is broken. It's broken, okay? Giving your whole team permanent invisibility. I mean, permanent, not like Riki invisibility, but you know what I mean. So anyway, this seems like they're encouraging you to run around with no boots and just be a Mirana with no boots and spam Moonlight Shadow. So if you're looking to pick up support Mirana, now would be the time, I would say. This seems like she is ripe right now to abuse. Anyway, that's not very much movement speed, but it's enough to be useful. That's what I'm looking forward to. It's just maybe you won't feel guilty if you don't have boots later on as Mirana. Monkey King having his Primal Spring mana cost reduced to a static 100 instead of 130 down to 100. I do think that hero needs to come back into the meta because he's just really entertaining and new and fun to watch. So support Monkey King is so fun. I hope they can manage to bring it back, but this is probably not enough on its own. Morphling going to be receiving buffs to the Adaptive Strike. Sorry, I was confused for a second. I kept reading Multi-Shot like it was something else. Anyway, Adaptive Strike, the talent at level 25 actually does 3 Adaptive Strikes instead of just 2. And the buffer, when you do that, is now 300 range instead of not having a buffer. So that means that if there's somebody 300 past your total cast range, you can still hit them with the Multi-Shot, if I'm not mistaken. Also, a small increase to his level 10 Waveform talent, which I mentioned earlier, but that talent makes a lot more sense to me than putting cast range on a spell that's just targeted. Anyway, Necrophos, the least picked hero that has been picked in 2018. I believe Spectre hasn't been picked at all, so she's the only one who literally wasn't touched. But Necrophos, out of the heroes that was picked, was the least picked. And I have to say that while this is a pretty quote-unquote cancerous change, because nobody likes waiting in the grave, but, you know, I still think it's what the hero needed. It's his niche. If you can't pick him for this reason, then you're not going to pick him. So we will see if this helps him, but I don't think it will. He's going to remain kind of down until people think of a reason to run him, which in general, you know, before he was kind of like this hero you could throw in any lane, and whenever that stopped, whatever reason that stopped for, that's when he stopped being viable. So we'll see what happens as far as laning, but not to remind you, but Techies being in the meta, I just feel like, you know, heroes like Necrophos aren't going to be able to go to any lane anymore necessarily in this meta. We'll see. In fact, that could hurt a lot of other heroes too. So Omni Knight getting a nice nerf. I feel like he's done with the nerfs for Omni Knight for now. This hero can just stew a little while. Base armor reduced by 1, and purification cooldown now scales. Instead of static 11, it's now 14 down to 11. So nice nerf. That's perfect. Leave him right there. So you don't have to touch him. Excuse me, one sec. I can hear the mic crackle. I was wondering if that was just me though. So thank you for telling me. But I'm not sure. I can mute the mic. Let me play with the cord. One sec. All right, I jiggled the cords. I think that'll help. If you guys hear it again, make sure you give me some what faces. But I haven't casted in 2 weeks, so it could be that. Ogre Magi. Oh no, I skipped one. Outworld getting a nerf. So Arcane Orb does use mana if it misses the target. That was a nerf, but I'm not sure. It's not clear whether that was intentional before, but it is a nerf. Arcane Orb mana cost also increased across the board. So it's a total increase of 10, 20, 30, 40. And that hero just, considering how his aura works, I think it's perfect that he's getting nerfs along these lines. Excuse me. But we'll see if the hero really moves at all. I don't think he will, to be honest. He's just very situationally powerful and otherwise doesn't have a lot to offer in general situations. Ogre Bloodlust grants himself additional attack speed, getting the Crystal Maiden's treatment, basically. If you're maxing Bloodlust for whatever reason, because you have a carry that wants it, for example, you can now run around and hit people 50% faster than before. But I don't know. This is actually a pretty strange change in my book, because Ogre Magi as a physical damage dealer doesn't make any sense. I mean, we've talked about it on True Dota 2, don't get me wrong, but I just think it's not a good build. So we'll see if anybody reads into this so far as to make Ogre Magi a carry and try to build physical with him, like a Battle Fury was the idea on TD2. But if that doesn't happen, I don't understand this change. Hopefully we see Ogres using it to be aggressive. That should be the point, in my book, I guess. Pangolier getting nerfs, but one nice quality of life buff as well. The Rolling Thunder no longer gets canceled when rooted or disabled. So he just rolls in place, which I feel like as powerful and cool as that ability is, it makes perfect sense that you would take away its downsides, but just give it a more fair interaction. It's fair to both parties. You don't have to pick root heroes against him specifically, but he also doesn't get knocked out of it anymore. So it's kind of like it cuts both ways. He also gets several sizable nerfs, and the main theme of these nerfs is essentially mana regen. This hero had insane mana regen talent. I mean, I don't know if you guys have done this, but I like building Battle Fury just to mess around, and it's stupid how much mana he gets from that. But anyway, any mana regen item you can pair up with this talent, whether it's, obviously not Arcane Boots, but any percent mana regen you can pair with that is absurd. Yule's, Spirit Vessel, stuff like that. So maybe we'll be seeing more of this utility Pango coming up. I guess I should just read these, but the static cooldown on Rolling Thunder is now 70 seconds. Swashbuckle mana cost has been increased by 10 at all levels. Shield Crash cooldown now scales, instead of a static 13, it's 19 down to 13. And then Shield Crash previously would count spell immune heroes. That was intentional, but has been removed as a nerf. And then, of course, 25% reduction to his mana regen talent at level 10, which was broken. It was really good. It's too good. I'm glad they nerfed it. Anyway, I liked it. It was super fun to play around with. So this is another one that was controversial, but this one makes perfect sense to me. Pudge's base damage increased by 7, but to compensate, his rot slow was decreased. So basically you can now do more damage with your right clicks when you're on top of people, but you're not slowing them as much when you do so. So it does basically mean that Orb of Venom is pretty well required on support Pudge, unless you're not trying to harass in lane. But if you're taking Rot at level 1, you're going to want an Orb of Venom, that's for sure. And I believe that's really all you want to say. And I don't think Core Pudge is viable, but that's not to say we won't see it. It's just not as good as it used to be. It's better than it used to be, but other heroes are stronger than he is. So Pugna base armor increased by 1. Level 15 talent also gives more hits for Netherward when it's taking damage. That's a plus 50% increase. So Puck now receiving an increase to his level 20 talent that reduces the Waning Rift cooldown. So it used to be -5, now it's -8. And I'm embarrassed I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's because it changed. So I'm going to go look at Puck's. I think it was 12, but I don't want to be wrong. Oh yeah, it scales. So it's 16 down to 13, and then with the talent, it would now be 5 seconds at max, and then you could get it with Octarine. You could actually get it down to 3.75 seconds on a. Where's the duration? Yeah, you could have a. Okay, I have to do this math really quick. Sorry, guys. You're not gonna. What's the uptime on Waning Rift if you have Octarine and the talent? So 3 divided by 3.75 is, yeah, so you have 80% uptime silence now if you go full max cooldown reduction on Puck. That's pretty dirty. Pretty dirty, guys. We'll see if that becomes a thing. All right, back to the notes. Queen of Pain getting a buff to her max burst damage potential from Sonic Wave. That spell has been super underwhelming since the changes to, spell amp, basically. It used to be the most punishing single AoE nuke, and now it's kind of like a, wishy-washy, honestly. But I'm glad they're addressing it. It's been awfully slow for my taste, but I do feel like QoP's niche really depends on her ability to have the best AoE nuke there is. So, of course, it has a wind-up, but that's part of the spell. Tricks of the Trade. So to analyze this briefly, I don't think QoP is going to be that much more viable. It's just a nice quality of life thing, so she feels more like other heroes. Riki, Tricks of the Trade, attacks slower. Makes perfect sense. That ability was just overtuned. Not much more to say. That hero is still really viable, and we'll see it in Captain's Mode this weekend, probably. I think it'll be picked at Epicenter. It was picked before, just not very much. It didn't seem like the teams picking it were taking those games seriously necessarily. Rubik, Telekinesis Lift, duration rescaled. Instead of 1.5 up to 2.25, it's now 1.1 up to 2.3. And so it now is lower at level 1 and higher at level 4. So yeah, I'm going to go through the rest of this pretty quick because I'm getting tired of talking to myself. But if you guys are out there, feel free to start asking your questions. I will be definitely looking at Twitch chat. Sand King, Caustic Finale no longer triggers on Denial. It's basically taking a step away from the lane-dominating Sand King because the power of the hero as a forward position is pretty undeniable, and without nerfing that, you can't really have a hero that does both things so well. So they're pretty much trying to nerf the 1v1 lane domination aspect of Sand King, and I think it's still there in the right matchup. Like, it might be still good against Broodmother, for example, but it's not as good as it used to be. Shadow Demon getting a buff to his strength gain. It's not going to make him viable, but it is a good hero. He's clearly good right now. Somebody needs to just show how good it is. Maybe they need to start abusing Luna and Shadow Demon. I'm not sure what it would take, but something like that. Shadow Fiend getting nerfs to his Spell Amp talent at level 10. That's a 20% reduction. And the level 15 talent, he loses 5 movement speed there. So it makes perfect sense. If you guys think back to... I've heard over and over again that turn rates are there to balance ranged heroes. Having these really fast ranged heroes like Shadow Fiend, these agility carries can be kind of hard to balance. So that's pretty much what that's about. Shadow Shaman getting the Dazzle treatment won't affect the hero's viability. Silencer getting a really nice buff, but I still don't think this is going to be enough. I said this in Discord earlier. My analysis is basically that the heroes Q and E, Last Word, and Arcane Curse are just not very good. Not to say that there aren't a time and a place for them both, but we discussed kind of how niche they can be. And even a straight 16 or, this is like a 17% increase at level 4. It's a pretty big increase at level 1. It's actually a 66% increase at level 1 to the amount of damage you're getting from Glaives of Wisdom. So he's much better in lane if you're taking Glaives of Wisdom. And in fact, it would make Support Silencer better too, because you can actually, orb walk, if you're into that old term, more effectively. And the Global Silence duration seems like a perfectly logical buff. So I think this hero is in a good place, but he needs more buffs before he's really going to be in the meta, so to speak. He's good against Enigma, but maybe with the rise of Enigma we'll see more Silencer. Who knows? Slark getting I don't think anybody knows what to do with this hero. So their current strategy is just to jack up his numbers until something sticks. And I'm happy with what they're changing. I just feel like they don't know they don't have a clear idea. So they're almost accidentally making him an offlane hero, which people have speculated about, but I don't know if that's their intention or not. It's pretty unclear. There was a thread on True Dota today about mid Slark, so we'll see what happens. Spectre, mana cost rescaled. Instead of 130 up to 160, it's now 100 up to 160, so a reduction of 30 at level 1 is pretty huge on an Agi hero. I think that goes from... She basically goes from being able to cast her spell like twice or 3 times to like now 4 or more times. So that's pretty cool. That's a really big buff for Spectre, but I don't think it's going to help. The only thing that's going to help is if Techies draws out all these games so late that teams get fed up and they just pick Spectre. But we'll see. That might very well happen. I think the illusion damage increase is a very nice buff, but it's, again, she already had a talent increasing this. So if they weren't abusing the talent, this isn't going to make her that much better. Spirit Breaker getting small buffs, very small buffs. 2% not relative increase there, so it's 17% to match his bash chance. Unless they changed that, I don't remember. But the weird part, I agree with the analysis I heard on BTS. This seems like it's going to make it difficult to use this ability. Nether Strike pushes enemies twice as far. Since he's a melee hero who often runs at the opponent, the optimal play for Nether Strike would now be to go behind the enemy and Nether Strike them back into your own team, like a walrus kick. But I don't think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of clowny plays where Spirit Breaker kicks people out of Black Hole and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. Storm Spirit getting this pisses me off. I know that he needs it, but there's other heroes like Wyvern who have a weaker talent for the same thing. And the reason Wyvern has a health talent is because she's tanky. Storm Spirit, he really needs the strength, but health isn't his thing. Health is like, his thing is armor. He has a ridiculous amount of armor. So anyway, it's a nice buff. Blitz was celebrating earlier, so I guess that means something, right? Sven, his cleave now matches Battle Fury. That's all you need to know. Doesn't do anything else. Terrorblade, base HP regen, halved. The reflection illusions also disappear if you are able to dispel the debuff somehow. So I'm assuming that means you could Lotus Orb or Guardian Greaves it off, or obviously BKB it off. So that would actually make the illusions disappear. It's a bit of a weird mechanic if you ask me. It's not going to be obvious. Like, this is one of those hard-coded kind of things you wonder about, but I do think it's a good nerf. I don't play Terrorblade, so the Sunder changes are wonderful. It's perfect. It's what I would have done. I mean, this is a little harsh, but I think it's probably necessary. I think the level 25 is much worse than the level 1, though, so I'm not sure if nerfing his lower levels is what he needed. I think IceFrog wants him to be this kind of weak early gamer but still have a mid-game presence, and so it's difficult to nerf a hero that's good at all points of the game and still have him be viable, but that's what they're going for here. Let's keep going as quickly as I can. Timbersaw, Whirling Attribute Reduction now considers bonus attributes. This was one that freaking triggered me when I heard BTS get this one wrong earlier. They were talking about it as if it would now reduce all 3 attributes, which is wrong. It actually considers bonus attributes from stats now, or from items now, instead of just the base attributes of the hero. So if you don't know what I mean, feel free to excuse me, ask me to elaborate, but other than that, it's a perfectly sensical change. That's not a real word. It's a good change to me because it's much easier now to look at a hero without having to actually hover over their stats and guess how much you're going to do to them. It basically means that instead of having to actually consider how much bonus attributes they have from items, you can just pretty much consider that all heroes will be affected equally. So it's another consistency change, and we will have to watch and see if this 2% decrease, not relative, will be effective in counteracting the buff. But Timbersaw wasn't overpowered earlier, so he'll be fine. Tiny, tree grab, area damage reduced, a whopping amount there. Pretty well neuters the hero, but I think he will still be picked because he's just good in situations. He's one of these generally useful heroes. It seems like heroes either fall into one bucket or the other. Right now, at least, there's not a lot of heroes that can be either way. Treant Protector, Leech Seed duration increased, which is also 1 extra pulse, so a flat buff. This spell was already much better than Mechanism. It was already much better than Purification. It's now a 5-second slow, and it's like 1.5 times a mech. Let's go find out. What percentage of a mech is level 4 Treant Leech Seed? So the total heal it's going to be, what, 5 pulses now? It can heal up to 360 before, so with one more pulse, it'd be up to 420 now, and then with the talent, it would be, what's the talent? So it's now almost twice a mech by default, and with the talent, it would be what? It would be even more. It'd be 700. So it's almost 3 mechs with the talent over time. It's a little less than 3 mechs. Pretty broken ability. I can't wait until we see it abused. Tusk, Ice Shard duration reduced. This was very much needed. I have a hero with a similar idea, and personally I feel like the fact that it didn't scale always triggered me. Always did. And his snowball speed also reduced, and Frozen Sigil only provides ground vision instead of flying. So basically telling all the Tusk players out there, you guys have had a long time to perfect your abilities on this hero. It's time to, let the good Tusks stand apart on their skill, and the rest of you who are using his abilities as a crutch, you guys will have to suffer. So that's kind of what they did to Earth Spirit, and it definitely worked out. The hero is in a much better spot than anybody anticipated, I would say. He's not useless, he's situational, and it depends on the team. Underlord, this is a very large nerf in the form of his Roche control being removed, but I do feel like it's a perfect nerf. It really does. It's exactly what I would have done. The Dark Rift, I really like the mana cost increase for how powerful that ability is. And, yep, no longer deals damage to Roche or Ancients. Perfect. Undying, getting a nice buff. We're almost done, guys. It is a decrease to the interval of his Tombstone zombie spawn, so that means you're getting more zombies quicker, but it still takes time. And his level 15 talent for Decay has been buffed. This is the OP part about the hero. I can't wait until we see Undyings with Aghanims running all over the place, ruining games for pros. They're going to call it so OP. It's been like this. I mean, it's getting slowly better and better. That's my point. It's not OP on concept, but I feel like this hero is going to reach the point that Kunkka did, or Sand King did, or heroes like that did, that got buffed for a long time. So we'll see if that pans out, but I think Undying is going to be a patch hero one of these days. Ursa getting +2 base armor. That is a very large increase. He now has 9 at level 1, making him the highest EHP hero against physical damage, I think, because Terrorblade's health is so abysmal. I didn't actually do the math on that one, but that was what I heard. So I'll have to check that one out later. I'll tweet a correction if I'm wrong. Venomancer, Poison Nova duration increased by 2 seconds, so a very small increase. It's only like an eighth, so 12.5% increase, but, it's still more damage. 2 more ticks of damage. Visage, Grave Chill duration reduced. Not going to affect the hero. It just makes it This was a buff they did a while back to make it this weird number, I believe, and then now it's back to being even 3 up to 6. Perfect. Don't have to do anything else. See how it affects him. It probably won't. Warlock Chaotic offering health increased by a whopping 50% at level 3, and it's untouched at level 1, but also an increase of 33% at level 2. And then Chaotic offering Golem permanent immolation was increased, as I mentioned earlier. It's now scaling 30 up to 70, so it is slightly higher than Radiance or Brewmaster. Weaver getting small buffs, a pretty nice buff to his base health regen, which will perhaps lead to the rise of either dual offlane or just like maybe even, offlane Weaver. I don't know if that's possible, but I would anticipate some teams will try it. I don't think we're going to see the support Weaver anytime soon, but who knows. Windranger, probably the focus of this patch, if I had to guess who they were aiming at with a lot of these changes. She gets a further buffed power shot. It now is no longer the dank 420 max damage, but it's now 450, which is still really good, obviously. And then Focus Fire, the attack speed increased, and a big buff. This is more of a quality of life buff, but this will make your potato Windrangers and your pubs that much less likely to screw up. Basically means that once you target someone with Focus Fire, you don't even have to think about it. You just stay in range and you'll keep attacking. And it's a very nice change. I feel like these are good changes, despite the fact that they lower the skill ceiling of these heroes. It really doesn't matter at a certain point if you're helping the hero somehow. Wyvern getting buffs. I do think the duration increase is nice. The point that was made on BTS is that it basically emphasizes that the skill can be used to hold someone in place during BKB. So that's basically all they're doing there. The attack speed reduction is, I think, commensurate with the duration increase to lead to roughly the same number of attacks or amount of damage. So 3 more to go. Wraith King, of course, I've mentioned him already, did get a very nice basically rescaling of Wraithfire Blast. He also got a buff to his level 10 talent that's related to Wraithfire Blast. So I wanted to confirm this on the wiki, but I think with the increase in the slow duration from this talent, that also increases the damage total like the old DPS talent did, because essentially you're getting more damage ticks. So I think it does the same thing as before, just with also increasing the duration. So it's a good spell. It's getting better and better and better. And specifically, it no longer costs 140 static mana at all levels. So it's much easier to use at level 1, 95 at level 1. And the cooldown was scaled upwards to accommodate his ability to cast more of them. So it is a slight nerf to his early spam ability, but that was only viable if you were like buying tons of mangoes anyway. So overall, Wraith King, I would say we will definitely see him this weekend as a support. 100%. He will be one of the most popular new heroes of this patch, as far as heroes to enter the meta. Witch Doctor totally gutted the early Maledict build. Instead of a static 20, it got the vacuum treatment. It's now 50, 40, 30, 20. And I can't say that it's a bad change, but I think they better make the spell stronger, or else people are going to be mad. That's all I've got to say. I mean, the spell was already really strong, but I just don't think it's fair to the Witch Doctor players to do that. It's kind of hurts if you like that spell. A lot of Witch Doctor players I know prefer that spell maxed, but this just makes the scaling more crucial, and it makes you feel like you have to do it. So it's not a fun way to play if you feel like you have to build a certain way. Finally, Zeus, level 15 talent, 50% increase, minor. It won't affect the hero. All right. I don't think anybody's in Discord yet. Oh, there's Tree Man. I'm going to go hail him and see if he's ready. He's probably ready, but anybody else who wants to join, as always, get a hold of me on Twitter, Reddit, or Discord. Hail me or send a PM, and we will do, as long as we've got guests, I'm going to be on the air. So as usual, we'll bring in, he's talking here. I'm just going to drag him. Hey, Tree Man.
Oh, hey.
Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second.
No problem.
Pull up the update again.
So
Yep, I'm good.
I don't really know what anybody in the audience wants to talk about as far as things we should circle back to, but I'm sure you have something as far as maybe I'll give you this question. What do you think will be the thing that pros leap on right away? Like, not necessarily what's the most OP, but what do you think they're going to think is OP?
I'm thinking we're going to see a lot more Timbersaw.
Really?
That Whirling Death rework, to where it works with all stats that you get instead of just your base, is going to make him a lot better at countering the strength hero meta that's been
that's cool.
Prevalent for
I like
the past
that prediction.
couple patches.
Oh, holy moly. Did I I somehow managed to change my scene, guys. Sorry. I just noticed that the audience was seeing the wrong stuff there. I don't know how long that was going on. My bad. Apologies. But we got it fixed. What were you about to say?
I tested it out. A Timbersaw versus a Sven. It's a little bugged right now, because if he hits a Sven with Rolling Death while Sven's ulted, Sven just instantly dies.
Is that confirmed? I mean, it has to be a bug. There's no way it's...
It has to be a bug. There has to be a tree there, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that one's a bug. But it kind of gave me a feeling that maybe that's what Ice Frog's going for here. Just killing strength heroes.
Well, I wish I could pull up a graph right now to show like the pick rates of Agi, Int, and strength heroes before and after the patch 7.13 that made magic resistance now a part of the perks for strength. That's the only way I could confidently say that you're right. But I do feel like you're onto something. It's just a matter of, I feel like we need to see which strength heroes Timbersaw ends up countering, because like he's really good against Chaos Knight and other heroes that he's good at counter pushing. But then there's always going to be certain heroes that counter Timbersaw. I was gonna show some here. I was gonna actually show some Timbersaw action in game. Let me spawn a hero. I'll just do an axe. Anyway, so is there anything else about Timbersaw besides, like, do you think the other changes affect him in any way, like the item changes, for example, or the offlane changes?
The offlane changes are going to be brutal for any and all offlaners. It
Except
was
for
already
Darkseer.
hard enough of a lane as a offlaner myself. It's gonna be rough.
I mean,
hopefully in the next 2 weeks patch, they'll realize just how gutted they've been. Maybe help it out, but
I mean,
probably not.
I would like to see if you agree or disagree with this. The offlane role has gotten easier since. I wish I had a patch right offhand, but since they've made changes to the offlane, it's gotten easier, and this is basically going back towards the trend of offlane being the least rewarding and hardest role. I mean, it always was. I mean, support, you know, you might die a lot, but, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe the difference was supports didn't used to get items, and offlaners used to get items, you know, more than supports, but now it's kind of even. It's kind of a toss-up almost.
Yeah, I'm really thinking that with the nerfs to early regen, with Mango and Magic Wand being less rewarding in terms of health regen, the 2-1-2 lineup is going to be coming back into power.
Well, that's what a lot of people have said they want, and honestly, that doesn't strike me as a bad thing. I mean, if that's really what ended up happening, I don't know if I'd feel bad about that. I mean, I don't know.
The only other thing that I'm kind of sad about with this patch was, yeah, the reworking of Sanjay. It just having greater maim now. There being no source of lesser maim in the game now.
You mean just for the nostalgia, or because it seems
just
weird
nostalgia.
to call it greater maim?
Yeah,
like, why
it
didn't
should
they
just
just
be
call it
maim at
lesser
this
maim and
point.
just buff it? Anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
so did you hear my theory earlier about that change? Because I have a theory.
oh,
My theory is essentially that they're
Sorry, go
setting the table for whatever the item that combines Sanj, Kaya, and Yasha will be, and that's why they have been moving pieces around, basically.
I think that this was just mostly to help pull back the reins on how powerful Sanjay Yasha has been with the 400 increase to its gold cost.
Well, it's encouraging
And,
people to hold on to their casual Sanjas, right? So in that regard, it is a nerf to Sanj and Yasha, but only if you were a hero that had the choice to begin with. And some people weren't necessarily in that position.
Yep.
Like, there's some heroes that would only build Halberd and only build SNY, not one or the other. So I don't know who it affects specifically. You'd have to make a list of heroes that, like, build Halberd, basically. Those are the heroes that got... Wait, so the Halberd
Huskar
heroes got... Okay, so... Most people probably didn't know this, but Halberd gave slightly better maim than Sanj, but slightly worse than Sanj and Yasha. It wasn't lesser maim or greater maim, even though it was called lesser maim. That's just a weird tidbit I happen to know. And I don't know. Basically, it means that heroes who... Since Sanj and Halberd both now have the equivalent of SNY, it's a nerf to SNY users and a buff to casual Sanj or SNY. Or, sorry, Halberd.
Yeah.
Well, that's far too complicated for us to keep going on about. So anything else you are excited about?
I'm both excited and concerned about the change to Broodmother Spiderlings.
I need to go play around with that. I'm going to go spawn a Broodmother and then kill her with different heroes.
The golden XP rework on the Spiderites and Spiderlings makes it a lot less rewarding to kill them.
Right.
Overall, but with the complete guttering of their armor, they're going to be... You actually have the option to man up versus them at your earlier levels, which is where Broodmother's supposed to be shining.
I don't know if... I don't know if it's going to really have the impact people are saying, but... how much magic resistance do they have right now? I'm trying to remember. Basically, does physical now counter her better than magic, or does everything now counter her?
Melee counters are better. Any source of right-click damage, Battle Fury carriers. Just one good hit from a Battle Fury carrier will kill her entire Spider Wave.
So, like, these Master Axes obviously one-shotted them before, didn't they? What would be something that wouldn't have one-shotted them before? That's a physical ability. I'm having trouble thinking of AoE physical nukes right now because there's not very many.
Pangolier can now one-shot them.
Ah, yeah, he can. That's a good one. That actually makes... I mean, it wouldn't have been a very good counter before, but now it's pretty good. I don't know.
That's all I can think of at the moment.
Yeah. We could definitely... I used to have a list of that kind of stuff. I was pretty interested in... I have a hero that I thought of that was, like, physical-based. What other physical nukes are there? I know the Ancient Prowler camp, that's a physical nuke.
Leshrax W.
Is that still physical? Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's... Yeah,
it used to be mixed, but now it's physical. Jeez.
So I'm gonna have
this
to
is where I'm dating myself, because everything... I remember old mechanics so much better than new ones. Horrible.
Oh, yeah, the composite damage.
Right. Yeah, mixed is... it was composite, you're right. Anyway, so...
Oh, yeah, that does remind me. Elder Titan Stomp. The actual part of him can now one-shot a Spider Wave.
Weaver Bugs.
Weaver Bugs?
Not one-shot, but are useful. Oh,
yeah, they can at least clear them out somewhat.
Huh. There was just a patch. I've been disconnected to the server. I don't suppose there was a gameplay patch. Do you know?
No. Maybe they're patching that Sven bug.
Yeah, I'm gonna get out of this client in just a moment after I've gone through everything I wanted to go through. What is Crush? Crush is 225. So Crush would be a good example of something that should kill it now. Let me see if I can get back in. As Slardar. So, regardless of the Brewmother changes, since you're the one here, I would love to ask more than one person these questions, but, you know, we'll just keep chatting, and I think like maybe 15 more minutes before I am wanting to go. Anyway, my personal favorite change, I'm not sure what the impact will be yet, but is the Maelstrom change. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I was a little bit put off by it at first glance. It's now going to be less of that powerful farming item that people would get just Gloves of Haste on, say, a sniper straight into Maelstrom to keep their farming speed up. Now it has two larger components, and without the attack speed boost, it's going to be more of a niche item, but better on those heroes that it was originally for.
Alright, so Crush does not one-shot them, but with any, like an AC, for example, if I buy an AC, it will one-shot them. Pretty neat. So it gives additional counterplay against Broodmother, to circle back to that. About the Maelstrom, so do you feel like Windranger or like... I feel like there's going to be some other hero that nobody has thought of yet that's going to be like building Maelstrom all of a sudden. So that's... I'm not sure who it is yet, but Ember is a good one that I've heard a lot about, and Pango is my other choice. But
Phantom Assassin.
Like what about like Puck and Io? Because they have those talents, right? They have the ones that let them attack based on the Dream Coil and the Tether attack. Both of those would be really good.
Any character that comes with an attack speed steroid, Life Stealer, Phantom Assassin,
Gyro with Ags,
Ursa
basically.
was the one I was thinking of.
Oh yeah, well, that's different, I guess. Okay, I just somebody hailed me.
With the magic damage nuke now being like, what is it, like 190? If you could get 2 procs off in an early game engagement, that's brutal.
I think this ability, this item is going to be very popular, but probably only on certain heroes. I really wish I had a clear idea of who. I would like to see the Gyro Ags Maelstrom build be a viable option. You said like, who did you say in there besides the Ursa and the Troll? You say TA or something?
Life Stealer and PA.
Yeah, those would be kind of heroes that would have built it before. Like the the scenario for building Maelstrom on those heroes before was when you needed to push. I have somebody in chat saying something about the show. Somebody in chat saying that Ember is going to be relevant.
Maybe.
I definitely already saw some Ember spamming going on the watch tab, so that's what I've been doing all afternoon.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to me to watch pros that don't play techies try to play techies.
Oh, man. So what's your prediction about techies? That's a good topic.
We're going to see him.
Yeah.
He's going to be picked by at least one team. They've been practicing him a fair bit. How he's actually going to perform... Probably from Optic, but they're going to have to draft with him in mind.
So they're going to pick like the Tiny, you think, or something like Tusk?
With all the reworks that have been going on, I'm thinking they'll run a Darkseer Techies offlane.
Or like Underlord with the Pit?
Darkseer with the...
well, I mean, how are you going to lock someone down for Blast-Off? I guess you're saying you're going to vacuum them into Blast-Off? Oh,
vacuum
that is
them into
pretty
Blast-Off.
Okay.
Or with an Ion Shell on them for follow-up.
Right. That's actually disgusting.
I think we might see something like that going down, but that's kind of a stretch.
The way Zai was playing it, he always ends up being very high on the net worth, and I'm wondering if we see the 3 position techies, or do you think it's exclusively as a 4 position?
Exclusively position 4. We are not going... He's has the ability to make a lot of farm from controlling
so he
the
might
enemy
end
jungle
up
and pushing
with
in waves.
3rd farm priority, but he might be in the 4 position still.
He'll always start out as that roaming Blast-Off. He's not going to be in a lane farming.
I mean, I feel like somebody will do offlane techies. I'm not saying that it'll be good. Like, I feel like Ice is going to do it, but what I'm expecting fully is like Earth Spirit or Monkey King or some of these like supports that have like long range, short duration abilities to hold you in place, you know, something like that. Yeah. I'm not sure who else you could... Let me pull up the hero list so I can fully... I don't know, but there has to be some, like... I mean, Darkseer is a really good one, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that I feel like we're going to see all manner of different things this week. Like, even Earthshaker used to be good, right? So I don't know.
Yeah. The best lane partners for techies is anyone that is tanky enough to frontline while techies plinks away with right clicks and has some kind of nuke or stun for a blast off to follow up on. My personal favorites: Tiny, Darkseer, Legion Commander being a big one. Which once she's hit 6,
the
if
duel
you're
is
on
an
top
instant
of them,
kill.
well, the duel, it's an instant duel win.
Well,
really strong combo in the early game, which lets your LC become that scary position 3, the carry killer.
I'm trying to tie this into the same topic. Do you think Helm of the Dominator has any impact on Techie's play, whether like his lane partner would build it? I don't think Techie's would build it, but like, do you think there's a situation where you go for like a hero who doesn't have disable, but then they get a Helm of the Dominator and use that for the disable?
Yeah, that goes like back
Enigma
to the
is what I'm thinking of, or someone like that.
Such. Yeah, Darkseer, I've seen a bit of play with him, vacuum into Centaur Stomp, giving him a very effective disable.
All right. Yeah, Darkseer with Helm and then Techies. That sounds like a really dirty lane. I expect the offlane Enigma to be a thing too. And Lich, actually. We don't have to talk about it, but yeah, those are both heroes I expect to see.
Yeah, they're going to be doing better, but a lot of people have been considering Helm of the Dominator a way to work around Techies to try to bomb some of his traps that he sets up.
That makes sense.
With the rework that they've done for it, with
the bounty is higher, so it's less valuable in that role if you feed the creep.
Yeah, a 200 gold bounty on that creep is fair. You really don't want the enemy team getting that.
Isn't that like the same tier as like a Necro creep or a Lone Druid bear, basically?
Yeah,
it's 300 for a bear, but. I don't blame you if you...
Sorry, getting a phone call.
Yeah, need to go or anything, but I had a request from chat to discuss IO. if you need a minute, let me know. But
Oh yeah, I actually did a little bit of play with the IO.
Cool.
And I'm kind of disappointed. Are
you of
really
the opinion that it lowered the skill cap?
There's just less utility to spirits.
Well, there's not literally less utility. There's more, but you can't do as many micro things with it, right? It has a slow where it didn't before, but you can't target it as precisely.
Well, with the IO plays that were big, you could use your spirit, spawn them, hit a jungle camp with them, and then spawn in the next set of spirits.
So that's what Crit was complaining about on Twitter. I don't know if you saw that he tweeted he seemed very upset, if I'm being honest. It's like, yo, I practiced IO, and like now I'm going into a tournament this weekend and I can't play him, like, you know, like along those lines. So
yeah, it's kind of disappointing. A good friend of mine's an IO spammer, and he messaged me earlier today just ranting about the changes.
Really? What did he say? I'm very curious.
Let me just pull it up. Tether is non-aggressive anymore without its slow. Spirits, you can't stay on top of them as well with them because of
you have to stay either very close or 700 range away. No in between.
Yeah.
In case you didn't hear it, my take on why they're doing this to IO is basically to help him fit into his niche almost. You know, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm like Relocate is really, I remember, sorry, I blanked there and I was trying to fill it. Tether was overloaded before, it did so much, you know, and taking the slow and putting it on spirits kind of makes his whole kit more, you know, like putting points in each of his skills is now more even versus before where it felt kind of like Tether and, you know, well, Tether was, I mean, what would you max on IO? I'm not actually an IO player, but isn't it
typically
spirits?
Before 7.13 where they reworked Tether to be infinite, you'd just get a value point in Tether and then max overcharge in spirits.
Right. So now you actually really have to pick what kind of IO player you are, whether you're enabling the mobility with the Tether, whether you're buffing somebody with overcharge, or whether you're kind of CCing and providing auxiliary damage with spirits. There's not really any in between anymore.
Yeah, it would be mostly on a game-by-game basis, and now he's...
I think that's fine, isn't it? I mean,
shoehorned into the role of being that 8th item slot for your carry.
Well, that's only if you don't play carry IO, which is pretty... No, just kidding. I mean, you can take the damage talents, is what I'm saying. That is what they want the alternative to be, is, you know, IO can enable his allies while dealing damage on his own, and that's, you know, I actually mentioned the Maelstrom IO. I don't think we're going to see it in a pro game, but I think it will be a pub thing. You know, we're going to see damage builds on IO. Who knows?
Well, there was one other thing that was bothering me in here. It was... Oh yes, Silencer! My pub hero that I spam.
I played I played a couple games of Silencer, like, not against real people, but like 2 days ago, and I was thinking about, man, this hero would be really strong if he just didn't suck. So what do you think about him?
They made his global silence a little bit better at early levels, but the big change is his talent getting an extra 30 gold per minute, and the Glaives of Wisdom being better at earlier levels and at late levels, a 10% increase across the board. That's going to maybe just give him a little bit push over to be more of a mid hero.
That's what I tend to think is the goal. But my take, if you just, I think I said it earlier, but my take was that his Q and his E are just not very good. So it hurts him in that regard.
Silencer comes to war.
Yeah, they aren't the best, but they have their niche.
Right. I think the Q is just, they've changed it so much at this point, they're not really going to be changing it because of how bad it would look, but I feel like if they just, I mean, his E could stay the way it is and the hero would be able to work, but something has to change, and making his W and his ult better does not make the hero suddenly fit into lineups where he didn't fit before, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, If anything, we'll probably in the future change his Q just to have a better slow after they cast a spell.
I just miss the days when his kit actually had synergy, but that's a long time ago. Like back when he silenced people and then did damage to people who were silenced. Well, I guess that actually wasn't. Yeah. So I always found it weird that he doesn't have a normal ability that just silences. I mean, anyway, but last word silences on a delay, which is it was pointed out earlier that last word is actually a lot better if you're a good silencer player and can cast it during a cast animation to instantly proc the silence, but otherwise it's really not very useful. I mean, it's a really good move to just spam, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's why with a lot of your silencers, whenever they start actually getting to any amount of money, one of their first pickups is going to be an Orchid, so that they can actually have a silence to chain into last word.
I do like that aspect of it, of that item on that hero. That's what it seems like. It's intentional the way they wanted you to not have a straight silence, so you would build Orchid, but it doesn't work very well when Orchid is not an every game item. Even heroes that love Orchid stats don't build it every game. So, So
I'm just looking at. Sorry.
No, I was going to say wrap up on silencer, and then I was going to ask you a couple of general questions.
Yeah, with the Ags rework that they gave him a while back, with the double damage on glaives against silence targets plus this, I really think they're trying to push more towards a silencer that's less of the position for roamer that's just used to stop an enemy ultimate, and more of a damage dealer.
I think we'll see more of both as a consequence, but not clear if it's. I think if anything, Enigma or some other big AoE team fighter, who is countered by silencer, becoming popular would be the best thing for the hero. But I don't know if that's something that is going to happen in this patch or not.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. All right. So let's go ahead and attempt to the best of our ability. I asked you what the pros would latch on to. I already asked you kind of general, and I think your first choice was Timbersaw. But if you had to if you had to leave on a note, what do you think is the note you would like to leave on? Like, which change do you think is going to be a sleeper hit, something that maybe people don't pick up on right away, something that we will see come up later?
I think we're going to see a lot more Warlock as a support. With how he's been performing lately, this small little tweak on his golems being better in the late game, a level 3 golem having 3,000 health with among the talents that it can get for them, spawning one on death, your Warlock's golems are actually going to be a threat again.
Last time you said something like that, I didn't take you as seriously as I should have, because you said Troll Warlord last time, and then Troll Warlord was picked a lot right after that. So I'm just going to say, for anybody out there listening, I think you should listen to Tree Man. But regardless, I think if I had to say what I think the overall theme is and what's going to, where the patch is really headed, and maybe they won't notice it right away, but I think it's going to be kind of back towards the old meta almost. I touched on the whole Ice Frog maybe having his a more direct part in this patch, it seems like, and I feel like we're headed back towards the older, almost slower meta, perhaps. So I don't know. I think we could definitely see this offlane change being the very most crucial, and then the offlaner changes are basically going to be the part of the patch that people really latch onto. I mean, I think people are going to think Darkseer is broken by this time 2 weeks from now, honestly. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think we will see some Darkseer in professional play starting at the tournament starts tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually need to go check if it's it's in Moscow, so I think that means it's going to be an early morning tournament. Yeah, it starts in 15 and a half hours from now, so that's going to be 12 hours from 11. So 11 a.m. tomorrow it starts, it looks like, in my time.
Yeah, I'll be... Yeah, sounds about right.
Well, unless you have one more wrapping up note you want to make, thanks for being here, Tree Man. I think you're going to be my only guest tonight, and I do really appreciate it.
Not a problem. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we'll see you again maybe in 2 weeks, and you're always around. I don't know how many people watch the VODs, but if you guys are watching these VODs and want to come hang out with people like me and Tree Man, we are in the True Dota 2 Discord, among other places, but you can just come chat with us anytime. We do love it, so join us, and I'm going to move you out of here as I just make a couple more notes, but thanks for being here, Tree Man. See you next week.
The only other thing that's of note, looking at the patches, is the slight change to phase boots, giving you perfect base turn rate.
I almost picked up on that one as my last thing. I don't know what to say about it other than it's a big shift as far as items go, but that's something I honestly will have to make a separate. Hopefully, when I do some other streams about item concepts, I will be able to talk about that in depth. But yeah, thanks, Tree Man. I'm gonna move you out. See you next week.
Not a problem. See ya.
All right, guys, and I think that's it. I just wanted to take a moment to sell out at the end of the stream because I think some people do watch these VODs. So in case you don't already know, once again, I've been Freelance Dota. That was one of my friends, Tree Man, from the True Dota 2 Discord, where we do hang out once again. So I'll drop that in chat if you want to get a link to that. But otherwise, tune in 2 weeks from now for my next patch reaction stream. Probably also going to be later in the evening like this one was. My goal, going like maybe a couple months down the line, or maybe just a few weeks, is I want to invite more personalities and other Dota people, not just people from our Discord. So there's the Discord link in chat. I have been trying to do a separate show on the alternating Thursdays opposite of this, and without going into what it is, I probably won't have a lot of time this coming week, like I said. So thanks everybody for tuning in. You might hear from me in the next week, but stay tuned to my Twitter. I'll drop that in the chat as well. But otherwise, follow me on Twitter for updates on when I stream. And yeah, I want to do some casting, but I'll be honest, there's just too much other stuff going on right now. And, there's a lot of other good people covering Dota right now. So I actually tweeted out earlier there was a really cool new event that's going on in the Middle East, like the first big tournament there. So I am really excited about Dota, and if I could, I would be making a lot more content. So stick around, guys. There will be some. And until next time, see you around.